and today I'm going to be addressing the issue of GMO labeling of the foods we buy as consumers. Well, first, we should start off with the question of what are GMOs? GMO stands for genetically modified organism, which are plants, animals, or other organisms whose DNA has been modified for some benefit. In the food we eat, GMOs are often used to make food last longer, produce bigger, and crops more productive. GMOs are a recent addition to our food, and DNA modification is fairly recent too. GMOs have become a big topic in the United States because people have concerns about what they're putting in their bodies when they eat foods with GMOs. A lot of foods you will find in the grocery store today have ingredients that have been genetically modified. Today we're going to talk about what GMOs are, what the issues are with GMOs, and what the current policy is in the United States with GMO labeling. People want their food to be labeled when it has GMOs in it so they can make informed decisions about what they are buying, but there's not always clear information on the packaging. The first GMO to be in grocery stores was a tomato called the Flavor Saver in 1994, designed to have a longer shelf life than regular tomatoes. You can see how this modification would be exciting and practical. If your food doesn't rot as soon, then you can buy more of what you like and use it when you want. Since then, most of our staple foods and the foods that are bases for most of the things in the grocery store, like corn and grains, have become genetically modified. The reason a lot of these crops have been modified is to help solve problems with hunger and crop loss, and there have been good things come from that. For example, in Asia, flooding in rice fields can cause massive crop loss. In an effort to combat that, genetically modified rice that is resistant to flooding has been a successful example of GMOs addressing problems in agriculture. A rice variety that can withstand being underwater for up to 2 weeks has been created and has helped keep rice production up in the face of flooding. The benefits of this modification have been tremendous for Asia and its rice production, but there have been some problems that have come with GMOs too. So what are the problems and concerns with genetically modified crops? Some crops, like corn, that have been changed to be resistant to pests have made some of those pests evolve into being resistant themselves, and they just continue to destroy the crops. Messing with the genetic makeup of those plants has in turn messed with the genetics of the pests that kill them. Also, some genetically modified foods have been engineered to be resistant to herbicides, allowing more of the chemical, which is used to kill pests, to be sprayed on plants to kill pests without killing the plant. As a result, things called superweeds have developed. A superweed are weeds that have evolved to become resistant to herbicides. In North Carolina, a superweed called Palmer pigweed has infested over 1 million acres of crops. In Georgia, 500,000 acres infested with the superweed had to be weeded by hand. The reason that GMO labeling is important to consumers is because some people are weary of eating GMO foods because they're skeptical of the genetic modifications and its possible effects on human health. In 2009, a study in Paraguay found that women exposed to the herbicide Roundup, an herbicide commonly used on plants, were more likely to have babies with skull and brain deformities. We haven't used GMOs long enough to know the exact health effects they may have in the long term. There have been some studies conducted to try to get better indications of what the effects of GMOs might be. One study done with rats and GMO potatoes aimed to determine whether rats fed with non-GMO potatoes would be healthier than those fed with GMO potatoes. Some scientists at the National Institute of Toxicological Research in Korea conducted this study, and the results indicated no difference between the two groups. So there isn't much research to back up the idea of negative health effects and vice versa associated with GMOs, but people are still weary of the genetic modifications because they're not naturally occurring. So now that we know what a GMO is, what it's used for, and some of the problems associated with them, let's talk about GMO labels on food. A GMO label is simply just a label on a food box or packaging that indicates the presence of GMOs in the food. Currently, there's no law requiring the labeling of genetically engineered foods in the U.S. Most other developed nations have GMO labeling laws that requires that the presence of genetically modified food is made known with a label. But the U.S. and the FDA have made GMO labeling voluntary for companies. In 1992, the FDA determined that genetically modified foods were substantially equivalent as conventionally produced foods and therefore not necessary to label, And now, more than 20 years later, that policy is still in effect today. This is an example of how foods in the U.S. are currently labeled. This Kind Bar box says here on the front, no genetically engineered ingredients. This Go-Go Squeeze box says the same on the back. It says that there's a non-GMO label on the back. So this one uses a label. And then this Prego tomato sauce indicates that there are GMOs. It's partially produced with them. So this one does have GMOs, this one does not, and this one does not. But it was really hard for me to find these examples because there are a lot of things in the grocery store that don't have this. There's no universal label applied to foods, as we've seen that these are all different. And they were just really hard to find because there's not a whole lot of them. So the label, this label clearly states that there's no presence of GMOs in this food. And it's possible that in the near future, our grocery stores here in the U.S. will have GMO labels on products. Because a bill recently passed by the Senate will require food manufacturers to use one of 3 different kinds of labels to indicate genetically modified foods in their products. The 3 kinds are either a USDA symbol indicating the presence of GMOs, a print label in plain language stating there are GMOs, or a scanner or smartphone readable QR code. There has been criticism that the law doesn't adequately protect consumers who want to know when there is a presence of GMOs in products. The QR code specifically doesn't even say in letters whether there are GMOs or not. You have to scan to find out. Small businesses even have the option of just putting a phone number or internet link for more information, not having to explicitly place the information on the item. The bill is not perfect, and the people who have been advocating for clear labeling are not satisfied, but it's hopefully a start to a bigger conversation on the topic. A grocery store that I visited while on vacation in Nashville, Tennessee, called the Turnip Truck, was a great example of the results of the public demanding GMOs to be recognized and labeled. This grocery store is a partner with the non-GMO movement and sells only products that do not have GMOs in them. The community of Nashville has a grocery store like this because the issue of GMOs has become a big enough concern that the people want to be able to have a place to shop where they don't have to read the labels on every product they grab off the shelves. The grocery store had a hot bar and a salad bar, as well as a deli that made fresh sandwiches. It also had all the other packaged foods that they sold. Outside of the grocery store was a sitting area where people could enjoy their food from the store, and on the wall was a big printed version of the non-GMO label that some companies put on their packaging to let people know their food isn't made with GMOs. This is the Turnip Truck grocery store's website, and as you can see, the store is adamant about letting people know they sell organic and non-GMO foods. They're raising awareness of what GMOs are just by their mission to provide fresh, local, and whole foods. This grocery store showed me that just how important the issue of GMO labeling and GMO usage is to some people. It's important enough that there would be a whole grocery store made just for that purpose. As you can see, there are a lot of questions and uncertainties surrounding GMOs, and it's understandable why some people do not trust them in their food. GMOs are genetically engineered foods that have become extremely common in our grocery stores and all over the world. People want for their foods that contain GMOs to be labeled so they can make informed decisions about what they're buying, but there's not always clear information on the packaging. And the current standard in the U.S. until the new bill comes into play is that labeling is not required at all for companies that use GMOs in their food. Once the bill that was recently passed is enforced, companies will still be able to get away with being discreet about their use of GMOs in their products. There are many issues that go along with GMOs, and the best way to be aware of them is to educate yourself about GMOs. I hope that I have helped you today to do that, and that you are now able to make more informed decisions, now knowing what GMOs are, the current issues, and what GMO labeling standards are.